I was relaxing at my waterfront condo when at 6 in the morning the security alarm went off. The guard called nervously saying my sister is here with movers and she wants you to move out because she says she owns the place. I took a slow sip of coffee and smiled. Let her in. She is about to find out exactly what I do for a living. What she did not know was that while she was playing checkers, I was playing 4D chess with the IRS. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Please hit subscribe and like this video to find out how a simple knock on the door turned into a federal investigation. My name is Monique, and at 32 years old, I have built a life that most people only see in magazines. My penthouse overlooks the Chicago River, where the steel and glass of the city reflect off the water like a mirror. It is quiet here, peaceful. Or at least it was until this morning. I am a forensic accountant, which is a fancy way of saying I find money that powerful people try very hard to hide. My family thinks I am just a tax preparer who got lucky with cryptocurrency, but the truth is, I work with federal agencies to dismantle white-collar crime syndicates. I see patterns where others see chaos. I was sitting at my marble island reviewing a decrypted ledger from a shell company in the Cayman Islands when the piece was shattered. The red light on my wall panel pulsed. Security breach. When Mr. Thomas the doorman called up, his voice was shaking. I told him to send them up. I did not scramble to hide my files. I simply minimized the window on my laptop and took another sip of my Ethiopian roast. I was wearing a silk robe and the calmest expression I could muster. The elevator doors slid open directly into my foyer, and chaos poured in. My sister Bianca led the charge. Her heels clacked aggressively against the hardwood floors I had imported from Italy. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and a fur coat that I knew for a fact she had put on a credit card she could not pay off. Behind her was her husband, Gavin. Gavin is a man who thinks wearing a three-piece suit makes him a Wall Street wolf, but I know he is barely a golden retriever. Behind them were four burly men in coveralls looking uncomfortable holding moving boxes. Bianca did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She simply swept her arm around my living room like she was Vanna White showing off a prize. "Start packing everything up," she barked at the movers. "Except the piano. I like the piano." I set my mug down with a deliberate clink. "Good morning to you too, Bianca. To what do I owe the pleasure of this home invasion?" Gavin stepped forward, puffing out his chest. He tossed a manila envelope onto the counter next to my coffee. It slid across the marble and stopped inches from my hand. "It is not an invasion, Monique. It is an eviction. We have the paperwork." I did not reach for the envelope immediately. I looked at Gavin. His forehead was glistening with sweat despite the air conditioning being set to 68 degrees. His tie was slightly crooked, signs of stress, high cortisol levels. He was not here to gloat. He was here because he was desperate. I opened the envelope. Inside was a quitclaim deed, a legal document transferring ownership of property from one person to another. And there at the bottom was a signature that made my stomach turn. Bernice Williams. My mother. The ink looked shaky, but it was definitely her handwriting. "Mom signed the apartment over to us last night," Bianca announced, pulling off her sunglasses to reveal eyes that looked tired and manic. "She knows Gavin and I need the assets to liquidize for his firm. You have been living here rent-free long enough, Monique. It is time for you to step up and help the family." I looked at the document again. 5 years ago I bought this place. I paid the down payment. I paid the mortgage. I paid the HOA fees. But I put my mother's name on the deed alongside mine as a joint tenant. It was supposed to be a gift, a security blanket, so she would never feel homeless again after Dad left. I never imagined she would weaponize my generosity against me. Technically, Gavin said, using his broker voice, the one he uses to convince grandmothers to buy junk bonds, since Bernice is a joint owner, she has the right to transfer her interest. And since she transferred her interest to Bianca and me, we are now majority stakeholders. We want to sell. You are just a tenant at sufferance now. You have 1 hour to vacate the premises before we change the locks. I looked at the movers who were already reaching for my limited edition sculpture. Put that down, I said. My voice was not loud, but it had the icy precision of a judge delivering a sentence. The mover froze and looked at Gavin. I turned my attention back to my brother-in-law. You want to sell my home? Today. Right now. Yes, Gavin said, adjusting his cuffs. The market is volatile. We need to move fast. I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms. I analyzed him. Why the rush? A quitclaim deed is messy. It clouds the title. No reputable real estate agent would list a multi-million-dollar penthouse with a clouded title and a hostile occupant in less than 24 hours. Unless they weren't using a reputable agent, unless they were desperate for cash immediately. How much, I asked. What does it matter? Bianca snapped, snapping her gum. It matters because I am a numbers person, I said, keeping my eyes on Gavin. How much are you selling my $3 million apartment for? We have a cash buyer lined up, Gavin blurted out. 2.5 million. Quick close. They can wire the funds by noon if the property is vacated. 2.5 million, $500,000 under market value. Cash deal. Same day close. In my line of work, those are not red flags. They are sirens blaring in a burning building. You do not sell a prime asset for a 20% loss unless you are running from something or someone. I looked at Gavin's shoes. He was tapping his foot nervously. I looked at Bianca. She was checking her phone incessantly. They were not just greedy, they were terrified. If I fight this now, I thought, if I call the police and scream about my rights, they will just drag this out in civil court for months. Meanwhile, Gavin will find another way to liquidate assets. No, I need to see where this goes. I need to see who has $2.5 million in cash ready to hand over for a property they haven't not even inspected. This smells like laundering. This smells like a Ponzi scheme collapsing. I closed the folder. I looked at my sister. The sister I used to braid hair with. The sister I paid tuition for. She was looking at me with pure contempt, waiting for me to beg, waiting for me to cry. Okay, I said. Bianca blinked. What? I said okay. I stood up and tightened my robe. If Mom signed it, she signed it. I am not going to fight you, Bianca. I have enough money to stay at the Four Seasons. Gavin let out a breath he had been holding for 10 minutes. Smart choice, Monique. Really. It is for the best. I will pack my personal essentials, I said, walking toward my master bedroom. You can have the furniture. As I turned my back to them, I heard Bianca whisper loudly to Gavin. See, I told you she is weak. She knows she is nothing without Mom. I walked into my bedroom and closed the door. I walked straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower to create white noise. Then I pulled out my phone. I did not call a moving truck. I opened my encrypted server app. I had 30 minutes to pack, but more importantly, I had 30 minutes to mirror Gavin's phone to my local network while he was still connected to my Wi-Fi. He thought he had won. He thought he was kicking me out. But he had just walked himself and his dirty little secrets right into the lion's den. I started packing a small suitcase, not with clothes but with hard drives. I threw in a few dresses for show. When I walked out of that room, I would be leaving behind a home I loved. But I would be taking something much more valuable. I would be taking the evidence that would send them both to prison. The movers were banging around in the living room. I heard the crash of something glass breaking, probably a vase. I did not flinch. Let them break the vase. I was about to break their entire lives. I checked the download status on my phone. 98% complete. Gavin's emails, his text messages, his offshore logs, all of it was siphoning onto my secure cloud while he stood in my kitchen drinking my coffee. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I opened the door and stepped out, ready to play the role of the defeated sister, but inside I was already drafting the subpoena. The sound of duct tape ripping off a roll echoed through my penthouse like a gunshot. I stood in the corner of my own living room watching my sister Bianca defile my sanctuary with neon orange stickers. She was slapping them onto my furniture with a rhythmic aggression that made my skin crawl. Sold, sold, trash, keep. She was not just moving me out, she was erasing me. My Italian leather sofa, which I had spent 3 years saving for, now bore a bright orange tag that read clearance. Bianca pulled her phone out of her pocket and adjusted her ring light attachment. I watched her face transform instantly from a scowl of determination to a bright manufactured smile. She hit the record button and held the phone up high, angling it to capture the sweeping view of the river behind her before turning the lens back to herself. Hey beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. I know I have been teasing a big life update and here it is. We are finally clearing out the family investment property. She walked towards me, and I instinctively pulled my silk robe tighter around myself. I was still in my pajamas barefoot on the cold hardwood while she towered over me in her designer heels. The camera lens felt like the barrel of a gun. Bianca laughed a sound that was meant to be light and airy, but landed heavy with malice. Say hi to Monique, everyone. She has been crashing here for a while getting back on her feet, but today is the day she finally spreads her wings. I stared into the camera lens, my face completely impassive. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was rewriting the narrative in real time. To her thousands of followers, I was not the successful forensic accountant who owned this building. I was the charity case. The leech. The older sister who failed to launch. I could see the comments rolling in on her screen. Hearts. Fire emojis. People praising her for being so generous to her struggling sibling. You look a little rough, Bianca said, reaching out to tuck a stray curl behind my ear. Her nails were long and sharp. Maybe you should go get dressed before the buyers arrive. We do not want you scaring off the money. I did not swat her hand away. I did not scream that I paid for the very phone she was holding. I just turned and walked away. The best way to win an argument with a narcissist is not to play. But I was not just walking away. I was leading the enemy exactly where I wanted him. I walked down the hallway toward my home office. The door was ajar. Inside, Gavin was already making himself comfortable. He had thrown his suit jacket over my ergonomic chair, the one I had custom ordered from Switzerland. He was sitting at my desk, my command center, with his feet propped up on the polished mahogany surface. He looked up as I entered, a smug grin spreading across his face. Nice setup you have here, Monique. A little overkill for doing simple tax returns, do you not think? I suppose when you do not pay rent, you can afford fancy toys. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my expression neutral. I need to get my files off that computer, Gavin. Personal data. He waved a hand dismissively. Go ahead, but make it quick. I need to print out the final sale addendums, and your printer seems to be the only thing in this house that is not password protected. Speaking of which, what is the Wi-Fi password? The signal on my hotspot is terrible up here. My heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment of fatal error. Most people think hacking is about typing furiously in a dark room like in the movies. In reality, it is about social engineering. It is about waiting for someone to be lazy. I recited the password slowly, clearly. It was a complex string of characters, but I gave it to him without hesitation. I watched as he typed it into his laptop. I watched as the little icon in the corner of his screen stopped spinning and turned into solid bars. Thanks, he muttered, not even looking at me. Now grab your stuff and get out. I have a Zoom call with the partners in 10 minutes. I walked over to the bookshelf and grabbed a few binders, pretending to be hurried. My hands were steady, but my pulse was racing. Gavin had just connected his unencrypted personal laptop to my secure home network. He did not know that my network was not just a gateway to the internet, it was a spider web, and he was the fly. I had installed a packet sniffer on the router months ago as a standard security measure for my high-profile clients. It monitored all traffic, ensuring no one was trying to intercept my data. But now it would do the opposite. It would intercept his. The moment his device shook hands with my router, every email he sent, every password he typed, every bank account he accessed would be mirrored onto my server. I left the office clutching my binders, letting him think he had bullied me out of my own space. As I walked back into the hallway, I saw Bianca near the entryway console. She was holding a small wooden box. My breath caught in my throat. It was an old, worn cedar box that smelled like lavender and peppermint. It was the only thing I had taken from Grandma Rose's house after she passed away. It contained no money, no jewelry, just photographs, old Polaroids of me and Grandma baking peach cobbler, letters she had written to me when I was away at college. It was my heart in a box. Bianca flipped the lid open and wrinkled her nose. "What is this junk?" she asked, pulling out a handful of photos. "Look at this dust, Monique. Why do you keep this trash displayed in the front hall? It ruins the aesthetic." "Put that down, Bianca," I said. My voice was low, dangerous. It was the first time all morning I had shown real emotion. She looked at me and smiled, a cruel glint in her eyes. She knew she had found a button to push. She held the photos over the open trash bag the movers had set up for debris. "We are decluttering, Monique. That means letting go of the past, especially the ugly parts." She opened her fingers. The photos fluttered down into the black plastic abyss. "No," I shouted, moving toward her. Bianca feigned surprise and took a step back, bumping into the console table. The cedar box fell from her other hand. It hit the marble floor with a sickening crack. The wood splintered. The remaining letters spilled out, sliding across the floor like dead leaves. "Oops," Bianca said, covering her mouth with a mock gasp. Her eyes were laughing. "Clumsy me. Well, at least now you do not have to pack it." I stood frozen, looking down at the broken remains of my grandmother's legacy. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a physical wave of grief and rage that threatened to consume me. I wanted to tackle her. I wanted to tear that fur coat off her back and scream until my throat bled. But I did not. I looked at the scattered photos. I looked at Bianca's triumphant smirk. I looked at Gavin appearing in the hallway doorway, annoyed by the noise. I bent down and picked up a single photo. It was me and Grandma on my graduation day. She looked so proud. She always told me, "Monique, use your head, not your hands. Getting angry is easy. Getting even takes patience." I stood up. I did not say a word. I did not give Bianca the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I turned and walked into the guest bathroom, locking the door behind me with a heavy click. Inside, I leaned against the sink and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked calm, but my eyes were burning. I turned on the faucet, letting the water run loud and hard to mask any sound. I sat down on the closed toilet lid and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I opened my secure app. A notification popped up on the screen in bright green text. "New device detected, MacBook Pro, user Gavin Brooks." I tapped the screen. "Initiate mirroring." A progress bar appeared. 0%. 1%. I watched the numbers climb. Every percentage point was a nail in their coffin. They had taken my home. They had broken my grandmother's box. They had humiliated me to the world. But while Bianca was worried about her live stream, and Gavin was worried about his Zoom call, I was about to download the blueprint of their destruction. The water ran in the sink, a steady roar covering the sound of my thumb tapping the screen, executing the command that would turn the hunter into the prey. 5% downloaded. I took a deep breath. Let them have the apartment for another hour. By the time they realize what I have done, they will be begging for a prison cell just to feel safe. My phone vibrated against the cold porcelain of the sink. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken 3 years ago, a selfie of me and my mother Bernice smiling over brunch. Back then, I thought that smile was genuine. Now looking at the caller ID, simply reading "Mom," I realized that smile was just a mask she wore when I was paying the bill. I took a deep breath, drying my hands on a towel, and swiped answer. I did not turn on my camera. I wanted to see her, but I did not want her to see the cold calculation in my eyes. Bernice's face filled the screen. She was not at home. She was sitting in the passenger seat of a car, probably driving to meet the notary. Her eyes were red and puffy, a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Monique. She sobbed, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. Monique, baby, please tell me you are packing. Please tell me you are not causing a scene. Gavin just texted me saying you are being difficult. I leaned back against the tiled wall. I am being difficult, I repeated, my voice flat. Mom, they barged into my home at 6 in the morning. They are throwing my things into trash bags. And you signed the paperwork to let them do it. I did it for the family. Monique. Bernice wailed, wiping a tear that might have actually been real, but I doubted it. You have to understand. Gavin is in trouble. Serious trouble. He made some investments that went south, and if he does not come up with liquid cash fast, he could lose his license. He could go to jail. Do you want your brother-in-law to go to jail? Do you want your sister to be alone? I closed my eyes. So that was it. Gavin's incompetence was now my emergency. And what about me, Mom? I asked quietly. What about my home? I paid for this apartment. I paid the down payment. I paid every single mortgage bill for 5 years. You know this. Bernice waved her hand dismissively at the camera as if swatting away a fly. Oh, Monique, stop counting pennies. You always do this. You have plenty of money. You have that fancy job with the government or whatever it is you do. You are single. You do not need a 3-bedroom penthouse downtown. It is selfish of you to hoard all that space when your sister is trying to build a family. Selfish? The word hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. I let the silence stretch for a moment, forcing her to sit with her own cruelty. Then I asked the question that I knew would expose the rot at the core of her betrayal. What did he promise you, Mom? Bernice blinked, her eyes shifting to the left. What? What are you talking about? Gavin, I said. He does not do anything for free, and neither do you. You would not throw your oldest daughter onto the street just to save your son-in-law, unless there was something in it for you. So tell me, what is the price of my homelessness? Bernice sniffled, straightening her collar. She looked out the window, then back at the phone. Her voice dropped, losing the hysterical edge and becoming frighteningly practical. The Golden Oaks community. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Golden Oaks was the most exclusive retirement complex in the state. It cost $10,000 a month just for the basic package. He said after the sale goes through, he will put down a deposit on a 2-bedroom suite for me. Bernice admitted, a greedy glimmer appearing in her eyes. It has a heated pool, Monique. It has a bridge club. I am getting old. I deserve to be taken care of. You were never going to send me there. You are always talking about saving and investing. Gavin understands that I need to enjoy my golden years. I stared at the screen, stunned by the sheer audacity. She sold me out for a heated pool and a bridge club. She traded my sanctuary for her luxury. Do you remember 5 years ago, Mom? I asked, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to control it. Do you remember when Dad left, and you were terrified you would end up on the street? Do you remember crying in my old studio apartment, saying you felt unsafe? I bought this penthouse not just for me, but for us. I put your name on the deed as a joint tenant because I wanted you to feel like you owned something. I wanted you to feel secure. I told you that day that this was our fortress. I remember Bernice snapped, suddenly angry. I remember you making me feel like a charity case. You always hold your money over our heads, Monique. Look at what I bought. Look at what I achieved. It is exhausting. Gavin is a man. He knows how to multiply money. He says if we sell this place now, he can turn the profit into millions. He's going to take care of all of us, including you if you stop being so stubborn. You are not listening to me, Mom, I said, looking at the recording indicator on my screen. I had started recording the call the moment she mentioned the Golden Oaks bribe. I need you to say it. I need you to admit that you know I paid for the house. Why does it matter? Bernice huffed, rolling her eyes. Money is money. Just because you wrote the checks does not mean you own the family. I am your mother. I gave you life. The least you can do is give me this asset so I do not have to die in a nursing home. Yes, you paid for it. Are you happy? You paid for the brick and mortar. But I am the mother, so I decide what we do with it. That was all I needed. I looked at the woman on the screen. I looked for the mother who used to make me soup when I was sick. I looked for the woman who told me to study hard so I could be independent. She was gone. Or maybe she never existed. Maybe she was just a parasite waiting for a host strong enough to feed her. Okay, Mom, I said, my voice turning icy. I understand completely. Good, Bernice said, visibly relaxing. I knew you would come around. Now be a good girl and pack your bags. Gavin says the buyer is bringing the cash in a briefcase. Isn't that exciting? Just like in the movies. Go help your sister. I am not going to help her mom, I said. But I am going to do exactly what needs to be done. I ended the call before she could respond. The screen went black, reflecting my face. I did not look sad anymore. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I tapped the screen and saved the video file. I renamed it Evidence Bernice Confession. Then I uploaded it to the secure server along with Gavin's stolen data. She wanted a retirement home. I would make sure she got a room, but it would not be at Golden Oaks, and it certainly would not have a heated pool. I stood up and smoothed down my robe. My family was dead to me. The people in the other room were just targets now. I walked out of the bathroom not as a daughter, but as a forensic auditor who had just found the smoking gun. It was time to go back out there and play with my food before I ate it. The sun had set over the Chicago River, turning the water into a sheet of black ink reflecting the city lights. Inside my penthouse, the mood was even darker. I was exiled to the guest bedroom, surrounded by half-packed boxes that Bianca had thrown at me earlier. To anyone looking in, I was the defeated sister packing up her life in shame. I had even staged the scene perfectly. I left a few crumpled tissues on the bedspread and kept the lights dim. But I was not sleeping, and I was certainly not crying. I was hunting. I sat cross-legged on the floor with my laptop balanced on my knees, the screen brightness turned all the way down. The house was quiet except for the occasional clinking of glass from the living room, where Gavin and Bianca were celebrating their victory with my vintage wine collection. They thought the war was over, but the packet sniffer I had installed on the network was currently harvesting every single byte of data, leaving Gavin's computer. I opened the decrypted file labeled Brooks Ledger. As a forensic accountant, I have spent 10 years looking at spreadsheets that would make normal people go blind with boredom. But to me, numbers are a language. They tell stories. And the story Gavin's numbers were telling me was a tragedy. I started scrolling through his transaction history for the last 6 months. At first glance, it looked like a standard investment portfolio. There were deposits from clients and transfers to various holding companies. But then I saw the pattern. It was subtle, but to a trained eye, it was as obvious as a neon sign flashing fraud. I saw a deposit for $9,500. Then 2 days later, another deposit for $9,800. Then another for $9,000 even. In the world of financial crime, we call this smurfing or structuring. The federal government requires banks to report any cash transaction over $10,000. By keeping his deposits just under that threshold, Gavin was trying to fly under the radar. He was trying to avoid triggering a suspicious activity report. Innocent investment brokers do not structure deposits. Drug dealers do. Tax evaders do. And apparently, my brother-in-law did. I dug deeper, tracing where this money was coming from. Gavin claimed to be a high-yield investment broker, but there were no investments. I pulled up the records for the holding companies he was wiring money to. Alpha Strategy, LLC, Omega Growth Partners. They sounded impressive until I ran a quick corporate entity search. They were all registered to the same P.O. box in a strip mall in Delaware. They were shell companies, empty vessels designed to hold dirty money. Then I saw the withdrawals. This was the part that made my stomach turn. He was paying out early investors with the money coming in from new investors. He was not generating profit. He was just moving cash from Peter to pay Paul. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. I realized with a jolt why he was so desperate to sell my apartment for cash today. The inflows had stopped. The smurfing deposits were drying up, which meant he could not pay the returns he promised his older clients. The scheme was collapsing. He needed $2.5 million not to invest, but to plug the massive hole in his sinking ship before the SEC noticed the water rising. And then I saw a name on the donor list that made me freeze. Bernice Williams, my mother. He had drained her retirement account, all of it. The $300,000 she had saved from Dad's life insurance policy was gone transferred into one of his shell companies 3 months ago. She thought she was investing in her future, but she had just funded his lifestyle. I felt a surge of nausea. This was not just greed anymore. This was predation. He had eaten his own family alive. Suddenly I heard a heavy footstep right outside the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had been so focused on the data that I had let my guard down. The doorknob began to turn slowly. I did not have time to close the laptop. If I slammed it shut, the noise would give me away. If I hid it under the pillow, the glow would be visible through the fabric. I minimized the spreadsheet instantly and pulled up a photo gallery of me and my dad. I slumped my shoulders forward, burying my face in my hands, and let out a shaky, convincing sob, just as the door creaked open. Light from the hallway spilled across the carpet. I looked up through my fingers, squinting as if I had been crying for hours. Gavin stood in the doorway holding a glass of scotch. My scotch. He was missing his tie and his top button was undone. He looked flushed with alcohol and arrogance. Still awake, Monique, he slurred slightly, leaning against the doorframe. I thought I heard you typing. I sniffled and wiped my nose with the back of my hand. I was looking for photos. I lied, my voice trembling. I just wanted to find the pictures of Dad before I packed the albums. Gavin took a sip of his drink, watching me with a look of pity that made me want to scream. He stepped into the room, encroaching on the little space I had left. You know you really should not be so sentimental, he said, looking down at me. It makes you weak. That is your problem, Monique. You hold on to things. This apartment, those old pictures, your pride. You need to learn when to let go. I looked down at the floor, effectively hiding the sliver of the spreadsheet that was still visible on my taskbar. I will be out by tomorrow, Gavin, I whispered, playing the role of the broken woman he wanted to see. Please just let me pack in peace. He chuckled, a low, wet sound. Tomorrow is a new day, Mo. You are a smart girl. You look decent when you put on makeup. Do not worry about the money. I am sure you will find some nice man to take care of you. Maybe you can find a guy who likes women with baggage. He took another sip of his scotch and winked at me. You will land on your feet or on your back. Either way, bills get paid, right? He laughed at his own disgusting joke and turned to leave. He did not see the way my hands clenched into fists so tight, my fingernails cut into my palms. He did not see the cold fury that replaced the tears the second he turned away. Get some sleep, he called out over his shoulder as he closed the door. Big day tomorrow. We are cashing out. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the hall. I waited until I heard the clink of the bottle refilling his glass in the kitchen. Then I sat up straight. The tears evaporated instantly. I looked at the closed door with a deadly calm. He thought I was looking for a man to save me. He had no idea that I did not need a man. I had a subpoena, and I had just found the evidence that would turn his big payday into a 20-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. I maximized the window on my laptop again. I highlighted the transaction history showing the theft of my mother's funds. I clicked save. You are right, Gavin, I whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow is a big day. But you are not cashing out. You are checking in. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse with a glare that felt accusatory. I had not slept. I had spent the entire night listening to the hum of my server intercepting Gavin's life. Now I stood in the shadow of the hallway watching the final act of his desperation play out. The doorbell rang at 9 sharp. It was not the friendly chime of a neighbor. It sounded like a gavel coming down. Gavin practically sprinted to the door, adjusting his tie. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, and his skin had the gray pallor of a man who knew he was walking a tightrope over a shark tank. Bianca was right behind him, wearing a white dress that was a little too formal for a Tuesday morning, trying to look like the lady of the manor. When the door opened, I expected to see a family. Maybe a young couple looking for their first home, or a wealthy retiree wanting a view of the skyline. Real estate in this building usually attracted people who wanted a lifestyle. Instead, a single man walked in. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my first car, but fit him poorly around the shoulders. He did not smile. He did not look at the view. He did not look at the custom moldings or the imported Italian tile. He looked at his watch. Mr. Vance, Gavin said, extending a hand that was shaking slightly. "Welcome. Please come in. As you can see, the unit is pristine. We are ready to vacate immediately upon closing." Mr. Vance ignored Gavin's hand. He stepped inside and scanned the room with cold, dead eyes. He reminded me of the federal agents I worked with, but without the badge and without the morality. He held a black briefcase in his left hand, and he gripped it so tight his knuckles were white. "The paperwork is ready," he said. His voice was gravel. It was, "Apex Horizon, LLC is prepared to transfer the funds via wire within the hour. We just need the keys and the final signature from the owner." I leaned forward slightly from my hiding spot. "Apex Horizon, LLC. That was not a name you gave to a retirement fund. That was a shell name. A throwaway title created to exist for a week and then vanish into the ether." Bianca stepped forward, flashing her influencer smile. "Oh, absolutely, Mr. Vance. My mother is just in the car downstairs. She is so excited to pass this beautiful home on to someone who will appreciate it. Are you moving in yourself, or is this an investment property?" Mr. Vance looked at Bianca like she was a speaking piece of furniture. "Corporate housing," he said flatly. "We require privacy, no press, no social media posts about the sale." Bianca's smile faltered. "Oh, of course. Privacy. I get it." I slipped back into the guest room and locked the door. I had seen enough. A cash buyer who does not inspect the plumbing. A corporate entity that demands zero publicity. A price tag that is 20% below market value. This was not a real estate transaction. This was a crime scene in progress. I sat down at my laptop and cracked my knuckles. "Okay, Mr. Vance, let us see who you really work for." I pulled up the Illinois Secretary of State Business Search database. I typed in Apex Horizon, LLC. No results. I tried Delaware. Nothing. I tried Nevada. Bingo. Apex Horizon, LLC had been incorporated exactly 48 hours ago. The registered agent was a generic legal service in a strip mall outside of Las Vegas. The list of managers was blank except for one name, K. Miller. I frowned. K. Miller. It was too common. A dead end. But in forensic accounting, there is no such thing as a true dead end, only a maze with hidden doors. I copied the employer identification number listed on the filing. I ran it through a proprietary database I had access to, thanks to my contract work with the Treasury Department. It cross-referenced tax IDs with known watch lists. The screen loaded. A red flag popped up next to the EIN. This tax ID was linked to a holding company that had been flagged 6 months ago in a massive RICO case involving the distribution of fentanyl in the Midwest. The feds had not frozen it yet because they were watching it, waiting to see where the money went. And now I knew where the money was going. It was coming to my house. My blood ran cold. I sat back in my chair staring at the blinking cursor. Gavin was not just paying off bad investment debts. He was laundering money. He had gotten involved with loan sharks, or worse, a cartel. They had given him dirty cash, probably physically in that briefcase or through a dirty wire transfer, and he was using my apartment to clean it. The scheme was simple, but deadly effective. The cartel buys the house for $2.5 million in dirty money. The money goes to Gavin and my mother. The cartel now owns a legitimate asset. They can sell the penthouse in a year for clean money. The money is washed. But here was the catch. Here was the part that made my heart stop. Who was signing the deed? Bernice Williams. My mother. Gavin was not the owner. Bianca was not the owner. My mother was the one on the title. When the FBI eventually raided Apex Horizon LLC and traced the money back, they would see that Bernice Williams sold a property to a known drug front. They would see $2.5 million enter her account. She would be charged with money laundering. She would be charged with conspiracy. At her age, a 10-year federal sentence was a death penalty. Gavin knew this. He had to know. He was a broker. He knew the laws. He was setting her up as the fall guy. He was going to take the cash, pay off his debts, and leave my mother holding the bag when the feds came knocking. I looked at the door. I could hear them in the living room. I heard the rustle of papers. I hate my mother for what she did to me yesterday. I hate that she chose them over me. But she was stupid, not evil. She was a woman who just wanted a heated pool and a bridge club. She did not deserve to die in a concrete cell because her son-in-law was a monster. I stood up. The forensic accountant was gone. The daughter was back. But this time I was not looking for approval. I was looking for a rescue. I grabbed my phone. I needed to stop that signature. But I could not just run out there and scream. Mr. Vance would probably shoot me. Gavin would deny everything. I needed to blow up the deal from the inside. I needed to make the property toxic. I opened the file I had prepared earlier. The one with the lien. The one with the $3 million debt owed to my company. If Mr. Vance realized that this house was drowning in debt, he would walk. Cartels do not buy debt, they buy assets. If I revealed the lien, the deal would die. Gavin would be ruined. But my mother would stay out of prison. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my hair. I unlocked the guest room door. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps silent on the rug. I could see them gathered around the dining table. My mother had just arrived. She was sitting in the chair holding a pen, her hand trembling with excitement. Gavin was pointing to the signature line. Mr. Vance was watching like a vulture. "Stop," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Everyone froze. Gavin looked up, his face twisting in anger. "Monique, get back in your room." I ignored him. I looked straight at Mr. Vance. I walked right up to the table and placed my hand over the paperwork covering the spot where my mother was about to sign her life away. "You might want to check the title search one more time, Mr. Vance," I said, looking into his dead eyes. "Before you wire $2.5 million to a property that has a $3 million lien on it." Gavin's face went white. My mother looked confused. Mr. Vance's eyes narrowed into slits. "What are you talking about?" Gavin stammered. "There is no lien." "Oh, but there is," I said, smiling a smile that did not reach my eyes. "And the bill collector is standing right in front of you." By 7 o'clock that evening, my living room had been transformed into a nightclub. Bianca had wasted no time. She had ordered crates of vintage champagne and trays of expensive hors d'oeuvres, all charged to the credit card she believed would be paid off by the sale of my home the next morning. The bass from the stereo system thumped against the floorboards, vibrating through the soles of my feet. Strangers filled my space. People I had never met were sitting on my sofas using my coasters and laughing loudly at jokes that were not funny. I stood in the kitchen wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, looking nothing like the owner of a multi-million-dollar penthouse. Bianca had made sure of that. When the catering staff arrived short-handed, she had looked at me with faux desperation and asked if I could help pass around the shrimp toast. She did not ask me as a sister. She asked me as if I were the help. And I accepted. Not because I was submissive, but because being the invisible servant is the best way to hear secrets. No one pays attention to the person refilling their glass. They think you are part of the furniture. I walked through the crowd holding a silver tray. I saw old friends from high school who looked right through me. I saw Bianca in the center of the room holding court like a queen. She was telling a group of women how she had practically rescued this apartment from foreclosure. She was spinning a tale of her own heroism, painting me as the destitute sibling she had graciously saved. I did not correct her. I just offered her a napkin and moved on. My target was Gavin. He was holding court near the balcony door, surrounded by a group of men in shiny suits. He was already drunk. His tie was loose and his face was flushed with the specific arrogance that comes from thinking you have gotten away with a crime. He was holding a glass of scotch, my 30-year-old single malt that I had been saving for a special occasion. I suppose grand larceny counted as a special occasion. I approached his circle silently. I did not have a tray this time. I had my phone tucked into my back pocket with the microphone sensitivity turned all the way up. Gavin looked at me and smirked. Well, if it isn't the auditor. Come to learn how the big dogs play Monique. The men around him laughed. It was a cruel, sycophantic sound. I kept my face neutral. I am just impressed, Gavin, I said, forcing a tone of naive admiration into my voice. I mean, selling a place like this in 24 hours. How did you do it? Even the best real estate agents say the market is frozen. Gavin took a large gulp of scotch and leaned in closer to his friends. The market is for sheep, Monique. Wolves make their own market. It is all about who you know. I have connections that bypass the MLS entirely. But 2.5 million in cash, I said, widening my eyes slightly. Isn't that dangerous? I mean, won't the banks flag a transfer that huge? I know from my job that the IRS watches large cash movements like a hawk. Gavin laughed loud and hard, slapping one of his friends on the back. That is why you are just an accountant, and I am a broker, Mo. You think inside the box. You think about rules. I think about structures. Structures? I asked, stepping a little closer. Yeah, structures, Gavin said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough to be picked up by my phone. You do not just wire money to a bank account, you run it through a pass-through entity, a ghost company. The money goes into the LLC. It looks like a business investment, and by the time anyone asks questions, the cash is already distributed and the company is dissolved. Poof. Magic. I felt a cold thrill run down my spine. He had just admitted to structuring and money laundering on tape. He had just confessed to using a shell company to hide the source of funds. So Apex Horizon is the ghost company, I asked, clarifying for the recording. Gavin winked at me. You are catching on quick. Maybe there is hope for you yet. Apex is just the vehicle. The cargo is freedom, baby. Tomorrow at noon, when that wire hits, we are all free. I nodded slowly. Enjoy the scotch, Gavin. It is very rare. I turned to walk away, having gotten exactly what I needed, but I was blocked by a woman standing with Bianca. She was tall, with heavy makeup and a dress that cost more than my first car. I recognized her as one of Bianca's influencer friends. So you are the sister, she said, looking me up and down with a sneer. Bianca told us about you. It must be hard. What must be hard, I asked. Watching your younger sister surpass you, the woman said, swirling her wine. I mean, Bianca is building an empire. She has the vision. And you are what again? A tax filer. It sounds so boring. Counting other people's money while having none of your own. The circle of guests went quiet, waiting for my reaction. Bianca was watching from the sofa, a smug little smile playing on her lips. They wanted me to snap. They wanted me to be the jealous, bitter spinster. I looked at the woman. I looked at Bianca. Then I looked at Gavin, who was teetering by the window. Accounting is boring, I admitted, my voice calm and steady. It is very repetitive. We spend all day looking at lines and ledgers. We look for mistakes. We look for lies. I took a step closer to the woman. But there is a saying we have in my industry. It is from Warren Buffett, actually. He says, only when the tide goes out do you discover who has been swimming naked. The woman frowned, confused. What is that supposed to mean? It means that right now the water is high, I said, gesturing to the party. Everyone looks rich, everyone looks successful. Everyone is drinking champagne and wearing designer clothes. But the tide is going out. In fact, the tide is going out tomorrow at noon. And when it does, some people in this room are going to be very cold and very exposed because they have absolutely nothing covering them but debt and lies. I held her gaze until she looked away uncomfortable. I smiled. Enjoy the shrimp toast. I paid for it. I walked away from the group and headed straight for the hallway. I did not look back. I did not need to. I had the confession. I had the motive. And tomorrow I was going to pull the plug on the ocean and watch them all scramble for cover. As I closed the door to my room, I heard the music swell again, drowning out the reality of what was coming. Let them dance. It was the last party they would ever attend as free citizens. The sun rose over Lake Michigan on the second day, bringing with it a blinding light that exposed the ugly aftermath of the previous night's celebration. My penthouse smelled like stale champagne and bad decisions. Bianca was passed out on the velvet sofa, still wearing her cocktail dress, clutching a throw pillow as if it were a life raft. Gavin was pacing the length of the living room floor. He looked manic. His eyes were wide and twitchy, and he was sweating through his fresh shirt despite the air conditioning being set to Arctic levels. I walked into the kitchen fully dressed in a sharp navy blazer and trousers. I looked like a CEO, while they looked like the aftermath of a frat party. I started making coffee, the sound of the grinder cutting through the tense silence like a chainsaw. Gavin jumped at the noise. He glared at me. "Do you have to make so much noise, Monique? I am waiting for the most important call of my life." I poured the beans slowly. "I thought the deal was done, Gavin. You have the cash buyer. You have Mom's signature. What is the holdup?" Gavin scoffed, adjusting his cuffs. "It is just a formality. The lawyers for Apex Horizon want to do a final title search before releasing the wire. It is standard procedure. I sent them the quitclaim deed this morning. Once they see Mom signed over her rights, the money hits my account by noon." I took a sip of my coffee, hiding the small smile playing on my lips. Gavin was a broker, not a lawyer. He understood how to sell stocks, but he clearly did not understand real estate law. He thought a quitclaim deed was a magic wand that wiped a property clean. He did not know that a quitclaim deed only transfers ownership interest. It does not remove debts. It does not remove liens. It does not clear the title. It just passes the baggage from one person to another, and this apartment had a lot of baggage. I watched him pacing, muttering to himself about yachts and private jets. He was counting chickens that were about to turn into vultures. I walked over to the kitchen island where my laptop was open. Gavin was too distracted to notice that I wasn't checking emails. I was logging into a secure, anonymous email server. I had the contact information for the lawyer representing Apex Horizon. It was a generic legal firm, probably one that asked very few questions as long as the fees were paid. But even crooked lawyers have one rule: they do not buy liabilities. I typed quickly. Subject urgent, regarding title encumbrance for 400 Riverview Drive, Unit 5B, Body Deer Council. Before finalizing the transaction for the subject property, I strongly suggest you perform a deep dive into the county recorder's office, specifically regarding filings from 5 years ago. You will find that the quitclaim deed provided by Mr. Brooks is insufficient to clear the title. Please look for a recorded UCC financing statement and a primary mortgage lien held by an entity named Phoenix Rising Trust. Proceeding with this purchase without satisfying the primary lien holder will result in immediate foreclosure litigation. I hit send. It was a professional, polite way of saying, "You are about to buy a stolen car that has a boot on the wheel." I closed the laptop and turned back to the sink, casually rinsing out my mug. Now it was just a waiting game. 10 minutes passed. Bianca stirred on the couch, groaning and asking for water. I ignored her. Gavin was staring at his phone, willing it to ring. When it finally rang, the sound was deafening in the quiet room. Gavin snatched it up instantly, putting it on speakerphone because his ego wanted me to hear his victory lap. "Mr. Brooks," he said, his voice booming with false confidence. "I assume you are calling to tell me the wire has been initiated." There was a pause on the other end, a long, cold silence that sucked the air out of the room. "Mr. Brooks," the lawyer's voice was sharp and clipped. "We are halting the transaction immediately." Gavin froze. His smile dropped so fast it was almost comical. "What? What do you mean halting? We have a deal. You have the deed. We have a deed that is worth less than the paper it is printed on," the lawyer snapped. "Our title search just flagged a massive encumbrance on the property. There is a first position lien recorded against this unit for $3.2 million. Gavin laughed a nervous, hysterical sound. "That is impossible. My mother-in-law owns this place outright. There is no mortgage. We checked the bank records." "It is not a bank mortgage," Mr. Brooks, the lawyer, interrupted. "It is a private lien held by a trust called Phoenix Rising. And according to the filing, the interest has been compounding for 5 years. The debt exceeds the purchase price. We are not buying a property that is underwater." "What are you talking about?" Gavin screamed, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "Who is Phoenix Rising? I have never heard of them. This is a mistake. Run it again." "We did run it again," the lawyer said. "The filing is ironclad. Fix this, Mr. Brooks, or do not call us again. We do not do business with amateurs who try to sell us encumbered assets." The line went dead. Gavin stood there holding the phone like it was a live grenade. He looked at the device, then he looked at the wall, then he looked at Bianca, who was now sitting up wide awake and terrified. "A lien," he whispered. "How can there be a lien?" He started tearing through the boxes on the dining table. He was throwing papers everywhere, looking for the original purchase documents, looking for anything that would make sense of this. I stood by the kitchen counter watching him unravel. I picked up a dish towel and started drying a glass. "Is there a problem, Gavin?" I asked, my voice dripping with faux concern. He spun around to face me, his eyes wild. You did this. You handle the taxes. You handle the bills. What is Phoenix Rising? Did Mom take out a loan without telling me?" I shrugged. "I do not know, Gavin. I just pay the utilities. But it sounds like whoever Phoenix Rising is, they own this house more than you do." Gavin let out a roar of frustration and kicked a box, sending my book sliding across the floor. $3 million. He was hyperventilating now. "If I do not get that money by noon..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. I knew exactly what would happen at noon. The people he owed money to would stop being polite. He scrambled back to his laptop, his fingers flying across the keys, trying to find a record of this mysterious trust. He was looking for a ghost. He didn't know the ghost was standing 10 feet away from him, wiping down the counter. "Find it!" he screamed at Bianca. "Find out who owns Phoenix Rising." I turned away to hide the satisfaction in my eyes. The trap was sprung. He was not thinking about selling anymore. He was thinking about survival. And he was about to find out that the only person who could save him was the woman he had just tried to destroy. Gavin stared at me with eyes that were bloodshot and bulging from their sockets. The phone was still in his hand, displaying the ended call from the lawyer that had just incinerated his dreams of a quick payday. For a moment, the only sound in the penthouse was the hum of the refrigerator and the shallow, terrified breathing of my sister Bianca. Then Gavin snapped. He crossed the kitchen in 2 long strides and grabbed my upper arm. His fingers dug into my flesh with painful intensity, but I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I simply looked down at his hand and then up at his face with an expression of mild boredom. "Let go of me, Gavin," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a judge delivering a sentence. "If you do not unhand me in the next 3 seconds, I will add assault to the list of charges I am compiling against you." Gavin released me as if I were burning hot. He took a step back, running a hand through his messy hair. "What did you do, Monique? What is Phoenix Rising? How can there be a lien on a property that Mom owns free and clear? We saw the bank records. There is no mortgage. I smoothed the sleeve of my blazer where he had grabbed me. I walked calmly over to the kitchen island where my laptop bag was sitting. I unzipped it slowly, deliberately, letting the sound of the zipper tear through the silence. From inside, I pulled out a thick blue folder. It was not hidden. It had been sitting there all morning, just waiting for someone smart enough to ask the right questions. "You are right, Gavin," I said, placing the folder on the marble counter. "There is no bank mortgage. Banks are messy. They require monthly statements and they send annoying letters that might alert nosy family members. When I bought this place 5 years ago, I did not want a bank involved. I wanted total control." I opened the folder. Inside were the original purchase documents printed on heavy legal bond paper. I spun the folder around so Gavin and Bianca could read them. 5 years ago, when I put the down payment on this apartment, I loaned the remainder of the purchase price to Mom. But I did not just hand her the money. I am a forensic accountant, remember? I do not do handshake deals, not even with family. I created a private trust called the Nemesis Trust. I pointed to a paragraph in the middle of the page. The Nemesis Trust loaned Bernice Williams the funds to purchase this property. I explained, my voice steady and professorial. In exchange, the trust recorded a first-position mortgage lien against the title. It is a standard defensive legal maneuver. It protects the asset from creditors' lawsuits and greedy relatives who might try to sell it out from under the owner. Gavin was reading the document, his lips moving silently, as he tried to comprehend the legalese. I saw the color drain from his face as he reached the section on interest rates. "But Mom owns the house," Bianca squeaked from the corner. "She signed the deed." "She owns the title, Bianca," I said, turning to my sister. "But she does not own the equity. The Nemesis Trust owns the debt. And do you know who is the sole beneficiary and trustee of the Nemesis Trust?" I tapped my chest lightly. "Me." Gavin looked up from the papers. He looked sick. "So you are the bank," he whispered. "I am the bank," I confirmed. "And just like any other bank, I expect to be paid first." I flipped to the amortization schedule at the back of the folder. I ran my finger down the column of numbers until I reached the current date. "Here's the math, Gavin," I said, leaning in close so he wouldn't miss a single digit. "The original loan was for $2 million. But the terms of the note include a compounding interest rate of 8% per year, plus penalties for non-payment since Mom technically has never made a mortgage payment to the trust." I tapped the final number on the page. "As of this morning, the total payoff amount required to clear the title is $3.2 million. I watched the realization hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, leaning against the refrigerator for support. "You have a buyer willing to pay $2.5 million? I continued, my voice dripping with false cheer. "That is great news, Gavin. Really. If the sale goes through, Apex Horizon will wire $2.5 million directly to the lien holder to satisfy the debt. That means the money does not go to you. It does not go to Mom. It comes directly to me." I paused, letting the silence stretch out. But here's the best part. Since the sale price is only $2.5 million and the debt is $3.2 million, the sale proceeds won't cover the full amount. That means even after you sell the house, you and Mom will still owe me $700,000. I smiled a genuine smile for the first time that day. "So congratulations, Gavin. You did not find a way to save yourself. You just found a way to liquidate my asset for me and leave yourself in debt for the rest of your life. You basically just worked as my unpaid real estate agent." Gavin slid down the front of the refrigerator until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head in his hands. He was making a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "You set us up," he choked out. "You knew. You let us do this." "I did not let you do anything," I said, closing the blue folder with a sharp snap. "You broke into my home. You tried to evict me. You tried to steal from the woman who gave you life. I just made sure that when you tried to pull the trigger, the gun was pointed backward." I looked down at him. Now you have two choices. You can call Mr. Vance and tell him the deal is off, or you can proceed with the sale, hand me a check for $2.5 million, and then figure out how you are going to pay me the other 700 grand before I sue you into bankruptcy. Gavin looked up at me. His eyes were empty. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who realized he was not the shark. He was the chum. I picked up my coffee cup and took a slow, deliberate sip. Your move, brother-in-law. The silence that followed my revelation was short-lived. It was shattered by a scream that sounded more animal than human. Bianca did not just get angry, she snapped. The reality of her situation had finally pierced through her bubble of entitlement. She was not going to be rich. She was not going to be the savior of the family. She was going to be the sister of a felon, and she was going to be broke. You ruined everything, she shrieked, lunging across the kitchen island. She came at me with her nails aimed at my face, her eyes wide with hysterical rage. But Bianca had spent her life at brunch and Pilates, while I had spent my weekends taking self-defense classes to relieve the stress of hunting criminals. I did not flinch. As she swung her hand toward me, I simply stepped to the side and caught her wrist. I used her own momentum to spin her around and pinned her arm behind her back. It was a simple control hold, but it rendered her immobile. She struggled, kicking her heels against the cabinets, but I held firm. Stop it, Bianca, I said, my voice calm, close to her ear. You are embarrassing yourself. Physical assault is not going to remove a federal tax lien. I released her and gave her a gentle shove toward the living room. She stumbled and fell onto the sofa, sobbing into the cushions. It was a pathetic sight. The influencer who projected a perfect life was now a mess of smeared mascara and broken dreams. Mom, make her stop, Bianca wailed, kicking her legs like a toddler. Make her fix it. She is your daughter. Tell her to delete the debt. Bernice was standing by the window looking like a deer caught in headlights. She was trembling, clutching her purse to her chest. She looked from me to Gavin, then back to Bianca. She did not understand what a lien was. She did not understand equity or trusts. All she understood was that her retirement plan was evaporating. Monique, please? Bernice stammered, taking a tentative step toward me. Just tear up the paper. We are family. Gavin says he needs the money. Just let him have the sale. I will make sure he pays you back later. I looked at my mother with pity. She really believed that. She really believed Gavin would pay anyone back. He cannot pay me back, Mom, I said. Because he owes people who do not take. I owe us. Gavin, who had been staring at the floor, suddenly jerked his head up. He looked at Bernice with a wild desperation. He grabbed a piece of paper from the counter and a pen. He rushed over to her, shoving the pen into her hand. Sign this, he commanded, his voice cracking. Mom, just write on here that you cancel the debt. Write that you do not owe Phoenix Rising anything. If we show the lawyer a signed letter from the owner saying the debt is forgiven, maybe they will push the wire through. Bernice looked confused, but she raised the pen, ready to do whatever he asked. Where do I sign, Gavin? What do I write? I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that stopped them cold. Save the ink, Gavin, I said, leaning against the counter. It does not work like that. Gavin spun around. She is the owner. She can forgive the debt. She is the borrower, Gavin. I corrected him, speaking slowly as if to a child. Mom is the one who owes the money. The borrower cannot forgive their own loan. That is like you writing a letter to Visa saying you decided you do not owe them for your credit card bill anymore. It is meaningless. I pointed to myself. Only the lender can forgive the debt, and the lender is Phoenix Rising, and Phoenix Rising is me. And I am not signing anything until I see $2.5 million in my bank account. Gavin stared at the paper in his hand, then he crumpled it into a ball and threw it across the room. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. He was vibrating with panic. He looked at his watch. It was 11:30. He had 30 minutes before his deadline, 30 minutes before the people he feared came looking for him. He looked at me. The look in his eyes changed. The pathetic desperation vanished, replaced by something darker, something cold and reptilian. He reached into the back of his waistband. I froze. My training kicked in instantly. Assess the threat. Locate the exit. Gavin pulled out a gun. It was a small black pistol, probably unlicensed. He did not hold it like a gangster in a movie. He held it with shaking hands, pointing it directly at my chest. Bernice screamed and covered her mouth. "Gavin, what are you doing?" "Shut up, Bernice," Gavin roared, not taking his eyes off me. He took a step closer, the gun barrel wavering slightly. "You think you are so smart, Monique. You think this is a game. You think I am just some greedy broker trying to buy a yacht." He swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his face. "I owe money to the cartel, Monique. Apex Horizon is not just a company. It is them. They fronted me cash for an investment 6 months ago and I lost it. All of it. This house sale was my only way to pay them back. If that wire does not hit by noon, they are not going to sue me. They are going to kill me, and they are going to kill Bianca too." Bianca stopped crying. She sat up on the sofa, her face pale as a ghost. "What did you say, Gavin?" I did not look at Bianca. I kept my eyes locked on Gavin's eyes. "So that is it," I said, my voice steady despite the gun pointed at my heart. "You gambled with dirty money, and now you want me to pay your debt." "I am not asking you anymore." "Monique," Gavin said, clicking the safety off. "Open your laptop, log into the trust account, release the lien. Do it now, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in you." I looked at the gun. Then I looked at Gavin. He was terrified, which made him dangerous. But he was also stupid, which gave me the advantage. He thought we were alone in the penthouse. He thought this was a private domestic dispute. He did not know that my home security system was not just an alarm. I slowly raised my hands, showing him my palms. "Okay, Gavin, calm down. Do it!" he screamed, shoving the gun forward. I took a small step back toward the kitchen island. "I am moving to the laptop," I said. But I was not looking at the computer. I was looking at the smoke detector on the ceiling directly above Gavin's head. Inside that plastic casing was a high-definition camera with a microphone. And because I had flagged Gavin's transaction data to my contact at the FBI earlier that morning, I knew for a fact that this feed was currently being watched by federal agents. They had been waiting for probable cause to raid. They had been waiting for a direct threat. Gavin just gave them a loaded gun. I placed my hand on the laptop. "You really do not want to do this, Gavin," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Shooting a federal witness is a mandatory life sentence, and trust me, there are people watching right now who can get here a lot faster than an ambulance." "Who is watching?" Gavin spat, looking around the room wildly. "There is no one here." I smiled. And for the first time that morning, I felt completely safe. "Wave to the smoke detector, Gavin," I whispered. "You are on candid camera." Gavin stared up at the blinking red light on the smoke detector like it was the eye of God. The gun in his hand, which moments ago had looked so dangerous, now looked like a toy. He lowered it slowly, his arm shaking under the weight of his own stupidity. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own steady breathing. "You asked everyone at the party last night if they knew what I did for a living, Gavin," I said, stepping away from the counter and walking toward him. I did not run. I did not hide. I walked with the confidence of someone who holds all the cards. "You called me a tax filer. You told your friends I spend my days looking for deductions on charitable donations. You thought I was boring. You thought I was safe." I stopped 3 feet away from him. "Let me clarify my job description for you. I am a forensic auditor contracted by the Department of Justice. I do not look for tax deductions. I hunt down money that people like you try very hard to hide. I track illicit financial flows across borders. I dismantle money laundering operations for a living." Gavin's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish on a dock, gasping for air. You think your little shell company scheme was clever? I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a shout. You think routing money through Delaware and then to the Cayman Islands made you invisible? It was amateur hour, Gavin. I have seen better laundering attempts from teenagers selling counterfeit sneakers online. I took a step closer, invading his personal space. Account number 7442-Bravo 9 at the First Caribbean International Bank, registered to a holding company called Blue Wave Ventures. Balance as of this morning, $412.63. Gavin flinched as if I had slapped him. Account number 3381-X-Ray 5 at the Grand Cayman National. Registered to you personally but hidden under your mother's maiden name. Balance 0 because you drained it yesterday to pay the deposit for the wire transfer fee. I saw the color drain from his face completely, leaving him gray and ghostly. And my personal favorite. The wallet address for your cryptocurrency holdings, ending in Alpha Zulu 9er. You thought converting the cartel's cash into crypto would wash it, but you forgot that the blockchain is a public ledger. I traced those coins, Gavin. I watched you move them. I watched you lose them. He dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a heavy thud that made Bianca scream again, but Gavin did not seem to hear her. He was looking at me with a mixture of horror and awe. He was finally seeing me. Not as the sister-in-law he could bully, not as the quiet woman in the guest room, but as the predator who had been stalking him while he slept. You are a Fed, he whispered, his voice trembling. I am the person the Feds call when they cannot find the money. I corrected him, and I found all of it. I have the logs, Gavin. I have the IP addresses. I have the chat logs where you promised Mr. Vance that this property was clean. I have everything. Gavin fell to his knees. It was not a gesture of prayer, it was a collapse. His legs simply stopped working. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. I did not know, he sobbed. I swear, Monique, I did not know. I thought you were just... You thought I was a sheep I finished for him. You thought you were the wolf. But you walked into my den, Gavin, and now you are realizing that you are just the meal. Bernice was sobbing in the corner, holding onto the curtains. Monique, please, she wailed. He is family. Do not let them take him. I looked at my mother, the woman who had signed away my home for a condo with a pool. She still did not get it. She still thought this was something we could talk our way out of. It is too late for that, Mom, I said, not taking my eyes off Gavin. The FBI has been monitoring the feed from this apartment for the last 20 minutes. They heard you threaten to kill a witness. They saw the gun. They have probable cause to storm this building right now. Gavin grabbed the hem of my pants. Monique, help me. Please. You said you could help. I will do anything. I will sign whatever you want. Just do not let them put me in jail. I cannot go to jail. I looked down at him with cold detachment. I kicked his hand away from my leg. I cannot stop the FBI, Gavin, I said. But I can offer you a choice that determines whether you live to see a courtroom or whether you disappear into a barrel of acid. Gavin looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. What choice? I pointed to the door. Option 1. You walk out that door right now. You go down to the lobby where Mr. Vance is waiting with his briefcase of cash. You tell him the deal is off. You tell him you cannot sell the house because of the lien. You tell him you failed. I paused, letting the reality sink in. Mr. Vance works for a cartel, Gavin. They do not sue people for breach of contract. When they find out you wasted their time and expose their operation, they will handle you. And they will handle you quickly. Gavin shuddered. He knew exactly what that meant. Option 2. I continued. You stay right here. You pick up that gun and you place it on the table. You sit on the couch and you wait. When the door opens, it won't be Mr. Vance. It will be the federal agents who are currently staging in the stairwell. You surrender. You turn state's evidence. You tell them everything about Mr. Vance and his bosses. I leaned down close to his face. Prison food is terrible, Gavin. The beds are hard and the jumpsuits are ugly. But federal prison has walls that keep people out. It is the only place in the world where the cartel cannot touch you. Gavin looked at the door, then back at me. He looked at the gun on the floor. He looked at his wife, who was staring at him like he was a stranger. If I go to prison, I lose everything, he whispered. My license, my reputation, my life. You lost your life 6 months ago, when you took money from a drug lord, I said, standing up straight. I am just offering you a chance to keep your pulse. Gavin squeezed his eyes shut. He was shaking violently. He was a broken man, a shell of the arrogant broker who had barged in here at dawn. Okay, he choked out. Okay, I will wait. Good choice, I said. I walked over to the kitchen island and picked up my phone. I saw a text message notification on the screen. It was from the lead agent on the task force. We are in position. Target is securing the cash. Do we have a go? I looked at Gavin huddled on the floor. I looked at Bianca weeping on the sofa. I looked at my mother frozen in fear. I typed back 2 words. It is showtime. I put the phone down and poured myself another cup of coffee. The coffee was cold now, but it tasted like victory. Sit up, Gavin, I commanded. Wipe your face. If you are going to be arrested, you might as well have some dignity. He did as he was told. He sat on the couch next to Bianca, but he did not touch her. They sat like 2 strangers waiting for a bus that would take them to very different hells. I stood by the window looking out at the Chicago River. The sun was high in the sky now. The city looked beautiful. It was a good day for justice. The doorbell rang. It was not the frantic ring of a family member. It was the sharp, authoritative buzz of the end. Gavin flinched. Is that them? He asked, his voice barely a squeak. I smiled. No, Gavin. That is Mr. Vance. We have one last scene to play before the curtain falls. I walked to the door. I did not look back at the wreckage of my family. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Mr. Vance stood there holding his briefcase. He looked annoyed. We have a problem with the wire, he said, pushing past me into the room. I closed the door behind him and locked it. You have no idea, Mr. Vance, I said, turning to face him. But do not worry. We are about to clear everything up. Gavin made his choice, and true to his nature, it was the wrong one. Instead of waiting for the federal agents to storm the apartment and accepting a plea deal, he decided to dig his grave so deep he would never climb out. He looked at me with wild, desperate eyes and demanded access to my printer. He thought he could forge a lien release document in 10 minutes that would fool a cartel lawyer. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. A lien release is a recorded government document with specific stamps and seal numbers. But Gavin was not thinking with logic anymore. He was thinking with pure, unadulterated panic. I unlocked my laptop and pushed it toward him. I did not try to stop him. In fact, I wanted him to do this. Every keystroke was another felony. Every fake signature was another year added to his sentence. I watched him furiously, downloading a template from a legal website, his fingers flying across the keys with a manic energy. He typed in Phoenix Rising Trust and filled in the satisfaction of mortgage section. Then he did something that made my forensic accountant heart skip a beat. He signed my name. He actually forged my signature as the trustee right in front of me. He hit print and the machine whirred to life, spitting out the warm sheet of paper that he believed was his ticket to freedom. He held it up, blowing on the ink, his face flushed with a terrifying kind of hope. See, he whispered to Bianca, who was huddled in the corner, shaking like a leaf. See, I fixed it. I just hand this to Vance, he wires the money or hands over the cash, and we are gone. We are safe. Bianca looked at him with hollow eyes. She knew deep down that nothing was safe anymore, but she was too paralyzed to speak. Gavin turned to me, his eyes pleading for validation. It looks real, right? It looks official. I looked at the sloppy forgery. The font was wrong. The seal was pixelated. It looked exactly like what it was, a desperate lie printed on high-quality bond paper. "It looks perfect, Gavin," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I am sure Mr. Vance won't notice a thing." The intercom buzzed loud and harsh, making everyone jump. It was the concierge. "Mr. Vance is on his way up." Gavin straightened his tie and smoothed his hair, trying to regain the composure of the arrogant broker who had walked in here 6 hours ago. He looked in the mirror one last time, baring his teeth in a rictus grin that looked more like a skull than a smile. "Showtime," he muttered. He arranged the papers on the dining table, placing the forged release on top. He motioned for Bianca to sit next to him. "Smile," he hissed at her. "You are happy. We are rich. Remember that." I retreated to the armchair in the corner of the living room, positioning myself in the shadows. I was no longer a participant in this scene. I was the audience. I was the director. And I was the executioner. The knock on the door was heavy, 3 solid thuds that vibrated through the floorboards. Gavin rushed to open it, swinging the door wide. Mr. Vance stood there, looking even more impatient than before. He did not come alone this time. 2 other men stood behind him, silent and imposing, wearing sunglasses indoors. In his hand, Vance held a metal briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The sight of it made Gavin's eyes widen with greed. "Gentlemen, come in," Gavin said, stepping back. "We have resolved the administrative error. Everything is ready for your review." Vance walked in, his steps heavy on the hardwood. He did not look at the view. He did not look at the decor. He looked straight at the table. He placed the briefcase down with a heavy clank. The 2 men stood by the door, blocking the exit. The air in the room grew thick and suffocating. It smelled of expensive leather and imminent violence. Vance unlocked the handcuffs and spun the combination dials on the case. Click, click, click. He flipped the latches and opened the lid. Inside, stacked in neat rows, were bundles of $100 bills, $2.5 million in cash. It was mesmerizing. It was also incredibly illegal. Legitimate real estate deals are done with wire transfers and escrow accounts, not duffel bags of currency. This was blood money. I could practically smell the fentanyl on it. Gavin stared at the cash, his mouth slightly open. He reached out a hand as if to touch it, but Vance slammed the lid shut. "Paperwork first," Vance growled. Gavin swallowed hard and picked up the forged document. "Here it is," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "The full release of lien from Phoenix Rising, signed and notarized. The debt is satisfied. The property is unencumbered." Vance took the paper. He held it up to the light. He squinted at the signature. The room went silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. I could hear Bianca's shallow breathing. I watched Gavin's face. He was holding his breath, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. If Vance realized it was a fake, he would likely shoot Gavin right there in my living room. Part of me wondered if I should intervene, but I stayed seated. The script had to play out. Vance looked at the paper, then back at Gavin. He shrugged and tossed the paper onto the pile. "Good enough," he grunted. "Sign the deed." Gavin let out a breath that sounded like a deflating tire. He grabbed the pen and signed the deed with a flourish. He pushed the papers toward Vance, and Vance pushed the briefcase toward Gavin. It was the exchange, the moment the crime was consummated. Gavin pulled the briefcase toward him, clutching it like a lifeline. He popped the latches again just to look at the money one more time. He was smiling now, a true, genuine smile of relief. He thought he had won. He thought he had outsmarted the cartel and the bank and his sister-in-law. He looked over at me in the corner, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "I told you, Monique," he mouthed. "I told you I would fix it." I did not smile back. I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen was already open to a text message thread. I typed 5 words. "Target has received the funds." My thumb hovered over the send button. I looked at Gavin hugging the money. I looked at my mother, who was weeping silently in relief, believing the nightmare was over. They had no idea that the nightmare was just beginning. I pressed send. The message showed delivered. I put the phone back in my pocket and crossed my legs. I watched Gavin pull a bundle of cash out of the case and smell it. He was intoxicated by the money drunk on his own survival. He turned to Bianca and started laughing a high-pitched manic sound. "We did it, baby," he shouted. "We are clear." He began stuffing bundles of cash into his pockets. He was acting like a child in a candy store, unaware that the store was burning down around him. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of heavy boots hitting the floor. The two men guarding the door turned around, but they were too late. The door exploded inward, splintering off its hinges. Flashbang grenades rolled into the room, blinding us with white light and deafening noise. Gavin screamed and dropped the money. Smoke filled the air. Through the haze, I saw dark figures swarming and moving with military precision. Their tactical vests read FBI in bold yellow letters. "Police, get down on the ground," a voice boomed, amplified and terrifying. "Hands where I can see them." Gavin froze. He looked at the money scattered on the floor. He looked at the forged document. He looked at the federal agents pointing rifles at his chest. And then he looked at me. I was still sitting in my armchair, calm and composed amidst the chaos. I locked eyes with him through the smoke. I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast. "You wanted the money, Gavin," I thought. "Now you have to pay the price." The sting was complete. The trap had snapped shut, and as the agents tackled him to the ground, I felt a cold, hard satisfaction settle in my chest. Justice had arrived, and it was right on time. The moment Gavin's fingers closed around the first stack of $100 bills, the universe seemed to pause. He was smiling down at the money, like a starving man looking at a feast. He did not hear the low hum of the tactical helicopter hovering above the river. He did not see the shadows rappelling down the side of the building past our floor-to-ceiling windows. He only saw the green ink of the currency that he thought would save his life. He lifted the bundles to his nose and inhaled deeply, closing his eyes in ecstasy. That was the last moment of peace Gavin Brooks would ever know. The silence was shattered by a sound so loud it felt like the air itself had cracked open. The massive glass doors leading to the balcony imploded inward. Thousands of shards of safety glass rained down onto the hardwood floor like diamond hail. At the exact same second, the front door to the penthouse was rammed off its hinges with a thunderous boom that shook the walls. Gavin screamed. It was a high-pitched, terrified sound that was instantly drowned out by the roar of chaos. Flashbang grenades rolled across the floor, detonating with blinding white flashes and concussive blasts that disoriented everyone in the room except me. I had already covered my ears and closed my eyes for the split second of impact, counting down the breach in my head. Through the smoke and the ringing in our ears, voices began to bark orders with terrifying precision. "Federal agents, get down! Get on the ground now!" The room was suddenly swarming with figures clad in heavy black tactical gear. Their boots crunched over the broken glass and expensive decor. Red laser sights cut through the haze, dancing across Gavin's chest and forehead. Gavin dropped the money. The bundles of cash scattered across the floor, mixing with the debris. He threw his hands up in the air, shaking violently, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. "Do not shoot!" he wailed, dropping to his knees. "I am unarmed. Please do not shoot me." Mr. Vance, the cartel representative, did not panic. He simply sighed and raised his hands slowly, knowing the game was over. But Gavin was not a professional criminal. He was a coward playing dress-up. He scrambled backward on his knees, trying to hide behind the kitchen island, crying for his mother. I watched from my armchair, calm and untouched. A piece of glass had landed near my foot, but I did not move. I watched as 3 agents tackled Gavin to the ground. His face was pressed hard against the floorboards, right next to the forged document he had just printed. The handcuffs clicked onto his wrists with a sound that gave me more satisfaction than any bonus check I had ever received. The chaos in the room was suffocating. While Gavin was whimpering on the floor, Bianca decided that this was the moment to assert her status. She had been cowering on the sofa, but as an agent approached her to secure her wrists, she snapped. She pulled away from him, flipping her hair back and pointing a manicured finger in his face. "Do not touch me," she shrieked, her voice piercing through the commotion. "Do you have any idea who I am? I am Bianca Brooks. I have 200,000 followers on Instagram. I am verified." The agent, a stone-faced woman who looked like she chewed iron for breakfast, did not hesitate. She grabbed Bianca's wrist and spun her around, slamming her chest against the velvet sofa. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering and wire fraud." The agent recited, her tone bored and professional. "You have the right to remain silent." "I am an influencer," Bianca screamed, kicking her legs as the cuffs locked into place. "You cannot arrest me. This is going to ruin my brand. I want to speak to your manager. I am going to live stream this abuse of power. Get your hands off my dress, it is designer." The absurdity of her entitlement was almost funny. She was facing 20 years in federal prison, and she was worried about her engagement metrics. Over by the window, my mother Bernice was not screaming. She was staring at Gavin, who was being hoisted to his feet by two agents. She looked at the scattered money. She looked at the shattered glass. And then she looked at me sitting calmly in the corner. The color drained from her face completely, leaving her skin looking like gray parchment. Her hand fluttered to her chest, clutching her pearls. "My heart," she gasped. Her eyes rolled back in her head and she crumpled to the floor in a dead faint landing in a heap of expensive fabric and broken dreams. An agent knelt beside her, checking her pulse and calling for a medic, but I knew she was fine. Bernice always knew exactly when to exit a scene that she could no longer control. The room was finally secured. The shouting died down, replaced by the static of radios and the heavy breathing of the arrested. Mr. Vance was being led out in silence. Bianca was still sobbing about her reputation. Bernice was being fanned by a paramedic, and Gavin stood in the center of the room weeping. The smoke began to clear. Through the haze, a tall man with silver hair and a jacket emblazoned with FBI walked into the penthouse. He moved with authority, surveying the scene with a critical eye. He looked at the cash on the floor. He looked at the laptop still open on the counter. Then he looked at me. His stern face broke into a genuine smile. He walked over to my armchair, stepping over the debris without looking down. He extended a hand toward me. "Good to see you again, Monique," he said, his voice warm and respectful. I stood up and shook his hand, firm and professional. "Special Agent Miller, you guys made good time." I was worried I would have to listen to my brother-in-law brag about his criminal genius for another 10 minutes. Agent Miller laughed. "We were listening to the audio feed from your smoke detector. As soon as he mentioned the forged lien release, we had everything we needed. That was quick thinking on the forgery. It proves intent to defraud. It is the nail in the coffin." He turned and gestured to an agent holding an evidence bag containing Gavin's laptop. "And the data you mirrored to our secure server last night was flawless. The forensic trail is airtight. We have him on structuring wire fraud and conspiracy. Plus, your tip about the cartel connection allowed us to pick up Vance. This is a huge win for the Bureau, Monique. We could not have done it without your consultation." Consultation. The word hung in the air. Gavin, who was being dragged toward the door, suddenly stopped. He dug his heels into the ground, fighting against the agents holding him. He twisted his body around to look at me. His eyes were wide with shock and betrayal. "Consultation," he rasped, his voice wrecked from crying. "You work for them." I looked at Gavin. I did not look at him with anger. I looked at him with the professional detachment of an auditor closing a file. "I told you, Gavin," I said, my voice clear and steady in the quiet room. "I am a forensic accountant. I do not just count money, I trace it. And I have been consulting for the FBI on financial crimes for 3 years. You brought a money launderer into the home of a federal asset. You really should have done your homework." Gavin's jaw dropped. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The sister-in-law he had mocked. The woman he had called boring. The woman he had tried to evict. She was the one holding the keys to his cell. "You set me up!" he screamed, spitting flying from his mouth. "You planned this whole thing. You are a monster." I took a step forward. "I did not set you up," I said coldly. "I gave you a choice. I told you to confess. I told you to stop. But you were too greedy to listen. I did not ruin you, Gavin. I just turned on the lights. You are the one who decided to be a cockroach. Agent Miller nodded to his team. Get him out of here. Gavin began to thrash, screaming obscenities as they dragged him out the door. Bianca wailed as she was led out behind him, her high heels skidding on the glass. My mother was lifted onto a stretcher and carried out, her eyes fluttering open just long enough to see me standing next to the special agent before squeezing them shut again in shame. I stood alone in the center of my ruined living room. The wind from the river blew in through the shattered windows, chilling the air. My apartment was destroyed. My family was in handcuffs. My life as I knew it was over. Agent Miller placed a hand on my shoulder. We will have a cleaning crew here in an hour to secure the scene. You did good, Monique. Go get some fresh air. We will take it from here. I nodded. I watched them leave, taking the toxicity that had poisoned my life for so long with them. I walked over to the broken window and looked out at the city. I took a deep breath. The air tasted cold and sharp. It tasted like freedom. The fluorescent lights of the federal holding facility hummed with a headache-inducing frequency that seemed to drill directly into my temples. I sat on a hard metal bench in the hallway holding a styrofoam cup of lukewarm water. I was not under arrest. I was a witness, a consultant, the person who had handed the FBI the keys to the kingdom. But sitting there watching the ruins of my family being processed through the system did not feel like a victory lap. It felt like attending a funeral for people who were still breathing. My mother, Bernice, had been cleared by the paramedics and brought in for questioning. She sat across from me in the waiting area, huddled under a gray wool blanket that an officer had given her. Her makeup was smeared down her cheeks in black streaks, and her expensive dress was rumpled. She looked small. She looked old. For the first time in my life, she did not look like the terrifying matriarch who controlled our world. She looked like a frightened child. She looked up and saw me. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and she reached out a trembling hand toward me. Monique, she whispered, her voice raspy from crying. Monique, thank God. You have to help us. You work with these people. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them Gavin is a good man. He just got confused. He made a bad business deal. I stared at her hand. I did not take it. Mom, I said, my voice tired. Gavin did not get confused. He laundered money for a drug cartel. He held a gun to my head. He threatened to kill me. Bernice shook her head frantically. He was stressed. He would never have hurt you. He loves family. He was just trying to save the house. You have to fix this, Monique. You have connections. Go in there and tell them you want to drop the charges. Tell them you forgive the debt. If you drop the lien, maybe the rest of it goes away. I set my cup down on the floor. I looked at this woman who had birthed me. Even now, sitting in a federal building with her son-in-law in handcuffs, she was asking me to sacrifice myself. She wanted me to obstruct justice. She wanted me to lie. She wanted me to save the monster who had tried to destroy me just so she could keep her illusion of a perfect family alive. I cannot drop federal charges, Mom, I said. The United States government is the plaintiff now, not me. And even if I could, I would not. Bernice's face twisted into a mask of bitterness. You are so cold. You always have been. You would let your sister's husband rot in jail just to prove a point. You are jealous. You have always been jealous of Bianca and Gavin because they have a life, and you just have your numbers. I stood up. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard rage that had fueled me for the last 24 hours. You think I am jealous? I asked, walking over to where she sat. You think I let this happen out of spite? Mom, there is something you need to see. I reached into my bag and pulled out a photocopy of the evidence file I had given to Agent Miller. I flipped to the page marked Incorporation Documents. I handed it to her. Read this, Mom. Bernice squinted at the paper, her hands shaking so hard the page rattled. I do not understand legal things, Monique. What is this? It is the founding document for the shell company Gavin used to launder the money, I explained, pointing to the bottom line. Look at the name of the president and sole proprietor. Bernice looked. She gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. It says Bernice Williams, she whispered. That is right, I said brutally. Gavin did not put his name on the company, Mom. He put yours. He used your social security number. He forged your signature on the articles of incorporation 6 months ago. I watched the information sink in. I watched her eyes widen as she realized the true depth of the betrayal. He set you up, Mom. I continued, my voice relentless. In the world of financial crime, we call this a fall guy. If the scheme worked, he kept the money. If the scheme failed like it did today, the FBI would trace the company back to the owner, and the owner is you. Bernice made a choking sound. No. No, he wouldn't. He said he was taking care of me. He said we were partners. He was taking care of himself, I said, taking the paper back. He was ready to let you go to prison for 20 years for running a money laundering operation. He was going to let you die in a cell while he lived on a beach in Brazil. That is the man you are asking me to save. That is the man you chose over your own daughter. Bernice slumped back against the bench. The fight went out of her. The denial finally shattered. She covered her face with her hands and began to wail a low mourning sound that echoed through the sterile hallway. She finally understood. She had sold her soul for a retirement home, and the devil had paid her in counterfeit bills. Just then, the heavy metal door at the end of the hall opened. 2 female officers came out escorting Bianca. My sister looked like a wreck. Her white dress was stained, her hair was matted, her wrists were cuffed behind her back. When she saw me, she did not look angry anymore. She looked desperate. Monique, she screamed, pulling against the officers. Monique, tell them I did not know. Tell them I am innocent. I just signed what Gavin told me to sign. I am a victim here. She saw Bernice crying on the bench, and her eyes lit up with a false hope. Mom, tell them. Tell them Gavin did everything. I was just supporting my husband. I am famous, Monique. I cannot go to prison. I have brand deals. I have a reputation. I looked at my sister. Even now, she was worried about her brand. She was worried about her image. She took zero accountability for the way she had treated me. She took zero accountability for the fact that she had happily spent the stolen money on furs and parties. I walked up to her. The officers paused, letting us have a moment. Bianca looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mo. We are sisters. Help me get a lawyer. Pay for a lawyer. I know you have money. I looked her up and down. I remembered the orange stickers she had put on my furniture. I remembered her laughing as she threw my grandmother's photos into the trash. I remembered her telling me I was nothing. I have money, Bianca, I said, my voice calm, but I do not spend it on bad investments. And you are a very bad investment. You are heartless, she spat, showing her true colors one last time. I hope you rot in that apartment all alone. I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was genuine. I won't be in that apartment, Bianca. And I won't be alone. I have my freedom. I have my integrity. And I have the peace of knowing that I never have to let you hurt me again. You chose your side, I said, stepping back. You chose the glitter and the lies. You chose to kick me when I was down. Now you have to pay the price for that choice. I nodded to the officers. Take her away. Bianca screamed my name as they dragged her down the hall toward the processing center. I did not turn around. I went back to the bench where my mother was still sobbing into her hands. I stood there for a moment looking down at her. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Part of me wanted to say I told you so, but I realized that neither would do any good. She was broken, and nothing I said could put her back together. I am leaving now, Mom, I said quietly. Agent Miller said you will probably get a plea deal since you testified against Gavin. You won't go to prison, but you will lose the house. You will lose everything. Bernice looked up. Monique, Where are you going? I am going to a hotel, I said. And then, I am going to buy a new life, one that does not include any of you. I turned and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors slid open, and the rush of city air hit my face. It smelled of exhaust and rain and possibilities. Behind me, I left a mother who had loved money more than her child, and a sister who had loved fame more than her blood. I walked down the steps of the police station and hailed a cab. I did not look back. The fallout was over. The dust was settling. And for the first time in 32 years, I was standing in the clear light of day, completely and utterly free. 30 days. That is exactly how long it has been since the federal agents kicked down my door and dragged the toxicity out of my life. The penthouse is quiet again. The shattered glass has been swept away and the door has been replaced. But the first thing I did after the police tape was removed was not to move back in. It was to hire a cleaning crew. And I do not mean a standard maid service. I hired a forensic cleaning team, the kind that usually cleans up crime scenes, in a way that is exactly what this was. A crime scene where trust was murdered. I stood in the foyer watching them work. They scrubbed the hardwood floors where Gavin had knelt and begged. They steam-cleaned the velvet sofa where Bianca had sat and cried about her Instagram followers. They removed every single trace of the orange stickers my sister had plastered all over my belongings. It cost me $5,000 to sanitize the space, but it was worth every penny to scrub their DNA out of my sanctuary. The apartment smelled of industrial lemon and bleach now. It was clean. It was sterile. But as I walked through the empty rooms echoing with the sound of my own footsteps, I realized something important. It did not feel like home anymore. Every time I looked at the kitchen island, I saw Gavin holding a gun. Every time I looked at the view of the Chicago River, I remembered my mother choosing a retirement home over my safety. The walls held memories that no amount of bleach could wash away. I had fought so hard to keep this apartment. I had outsmarted a cartel and the FBI to protect my ownership. But now that I had won the prize, felt hollow. This penthouse was a monument to a war I never wanted to fight. I realized that keeping it would mean living inside a scar. And I was done being defined by my wounds. So I did what any rational investor would do. I listed it. The market was still hot, and ironically the notoriety of the building after the raid had only increased its value. People love a place with a story, even if that story involves a federal sting operation. It sold in 3 days. And because I had successfully enforced my lien and cleared the title, I walked away with the full equity. The check that hit my bank account was substantial. But it was not the only deposit I received that week. The FBI has a whistleblower program. Because my intelligence led to the seizure of millions in cartel assets and the dismantling of a major money laundering ring, I was entitled to a percentage of the recovered funds. It is a little-known fact about federal law that pays to be a good citizen. When that wire transfer landed, combined with the profits from the apartment sale, my net worth didn't just recover, it doubled. I did not put the money in a trust this time. I did not hide it. I used it to buy a life that no one could ever threaten again. I moved out of the city. I traded the vertical glass tower for a sprawling villa on the North Shore. My new home is made of stone. It has a gate that requires a biometric scan to open. It sits on 2 acres of private land, surrounded by oak trees that are older than my entire family lineage. There is no joint tenancy here. There is no mortgage. The deed has one name on it, and one name only. Monique. Tonight is my first night in the new house. I am sitting on the limestone patio wrapped in a cashmere blanket, listening to the sound of crickets instead of sirens. The air here smells different. It smells like earth and privacy. Inside the house is still mostly empty. I bought all new furniture. I did not bring a single thing from the old life, except for the few photos of my grandmother that I managed to salvage from the trash. My phone vibrates on the glass table next to me. I glance at the screen. It is a number I know by heart. It is my mother. She has been calling every day since she was released. She leaves voicemails crying. She leaves voicemails begging. She tells me that Gavin is looking at 20 years and Bianca is facing 5. She tells me she is lonely. She tells me she is broke because the government seized her accounts. She wants to know if I can help with her legal fees. She wants to know if there is a guest room in my new house. I pick up the phone. I do not answer it. I look at the contact card. Mom. A word that used to mean safety. A word that used to mean love. Now it just means liability. I tap the edit button. I scroll down to the bottom of the screen. My finger hovers over the red text that says, block caller. For years I thought that being a good daughter meant being a doormat. I thought that family meant setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. But looking at that screen, I realize that I have already burned enough. I have nothing left to give them but my absence. I press the button. The contact disappears. The phone goes silent. I feel a weight lift off my chest that I didn't even know I was carrying. It is done. The cord is cut. I am an orphan by choice, and I have never felt more whole. I reach for the bottle of wine on the table. It is the vintage single malt scotch, actually the one Gavin had opened but never got to finish. I saved it. It felt poetic to drink it myself. I pour a glass, the amber liquid catching the light of the moon. I pick up the remote and turn on the outdoor television mounted above the fireplace. The evening news is on. The anchor is talking about the high-profile bust of a white-collar crime ring. And there on the screen is Gavin's mugshot. He looks terrible. His hair is unkempt, his eyes are hollow, and he is wearing an orange jumpsuit that definitely does not fit his broker aesthetic. The headline reads, "Local broker and wife indicted in multi-million-dollar laundering scheme." I watch the footage of Bianca being led into the courthouse covering her face with her handcuffed hands. The reporter mentions that an anonymous tip from a forensic accountant led to the swift arrests. I take a sip of the scotch. It burns going down, but it settles warm in my stomach. They wanted to be famous. They wanted to be rich. They wanted to be the main characters. Well, they finally got their wish. They are on every screen in America. I turn off the TV, plunging the patio back into darkness. I look directly into the camera lens of my phone, which is recording this final confession. If you are watching this and you feel trapped by people who claim to love you while they steal your peace, listen to me. You do not owe them your future just because they are part of your past. You can walk away. You can build your own walls. You can be your own bank. I raise my glass to the night sky, to the woman I used to be, and the woman I had to become to survive her. I smile. And remember one thing. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking that quiet people are weak. Do not ever wake a sleeping lion, especially when that lion holds the keys to your accounting books. This story serves as a profound reminder that silence should never be mistaken for weakness. Monique's victory demonstrates that true power isn't found in arrogance or flashy displays of wealth, but in knowledge, preparation, and unwavering self-worth. Her family's downfall was inevitable because they valued greed over blood and fatally underestimated the very person they tried to exploit. Ultimately, the most important lesson is that toxic loyalty is a trap. We must have the courage to sever ties with relatives who threaten our peace, realizing that standing alone with integrity is far better than standing in a crowded room with traitors. If you believe Monique made the right choice by choosing justice over a toxic family, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of ultimate revenge.